Hi there. Today I am working on a hair, basically trying to practice hair techniques. So what I'm going to be doing is using a really rough technique that I've seen just to kind of get me started with drawing hair. And essentially what the technique is you put down a blob of color and then you use a very simple smudge brush to smudge it into what we would call furry areas, So this is obviously, it's a limited method, but it's a good place to start. So here I am just putting down a blob of colour, messing around, realising I've not got the opacity up to 100%. There we go, there is our opacity. So now I've laid down a decent sized blob of colour. I can select my smudge brush tool, set it to the soft round brush, and then basically just using the strength setting at about 50 to 60%, just dragging out pieces of fur. One of the things that is a bit frustrating is there is quite a lot of lag with the smudge brush tool, which does seem to get a little bit better towards the end, but at the very beginning here you can see that it's really slow to react. I mean, my brush strokes are pretty quick, and this amount, there you go, that one's really slow. So you can see the input lag is pretty horrendous on this. I'm not entirely sure how to fix it, but I will obviously do some experimenting to try and find a better way of doing it. So I'm just going to basically just lay down this first layer, use the smudge brush tool, get some furry looking, get this blob looking nice and furry, and then basically just lay down different colours on top of it and try to get kind of a layered effect going. One of the things that I'm finding, a little bit off topic, in my practicing and my looking for reference material, is that there seems to be an awful lot of negative feeling towards AI art generators, which is interesting. I do understand. I do understand where people are coming from. They feel that AI art is in some way to the detriment of real artists, and they seem to be kind of clutching at straws, looking to find different ways that they can attack the AI art generators. And one of the most common ones is this idea that you should be able to refuse to have your art used as a reference by these materials, these engines. There's a pretty flawed mentality, I think. And I do apologise if you're one of the people who feels that way, but if you upload any image to the internet, whether it's on DeviantArt or Facebook or Instagram, the minute you upload that image, it basically becomes public domain. Yes, you still hold the copyright for it, presuming that it is a completely original piece of artwork, but you can't stop people from using your images as reference. Other artists will automatically use your items, your artwork as reference, but you don't go after them for copyright infringement. And it isn't copyright infringement because it's not directly copying your images, it's using them as a reference to combine with other images to make something else. So I feel like the notion that we can in some way eradicate AI art generators by refusing to let them use our artwork is a non-starter, really. Don't get me wrong, there are a huge number of artists, particularly on DeviantArt, who frustratingly upload AI generated art and claim it's their own, and that can be a little bit frustrating because it gives people like me who are beginner artists a false sense of what is achievable, because of the way that the AI generators generate art. They might use photographs as a sample as well, so there's a lot of blending and things like that, line art and things like that just aren't really, well, they're possible to draw by hand, but not in any reasonable amount of time. So you see people pushing out 4 or 5 images a day, and you're thinking, holy crap, how does this person do that? And then you realize that they are using an AI art generator. They just haven't been honest about it and told anyone. So that for me is the thing that kind of I find frustrating. But AI art generators should be something that we can use as a tool to help generate a reference image rather than scouring the internet trying to find the image that we want. Things like Midjourney and DALL-E, they've already done the legwork for us. So if I type in a prompt into Midjourney of find me a Marvel style drawing of Captain America in a specific pose, then it will kind of do that for me. So all I have to do then is use that as a reference. So I think it's a great tool for using to create reference images. And there's always going to be, and this goes for any technology that exists, there's always going to be a few people who misuse it, or are dishonest about the way they've used it. That's just human nature, that you're never going to be able to eradicate that. I think wasting energy and upsetting yourself focusing on something like that is only really going to affect you. You can't. AI is a fact of life. There's nothing you can do about it. So you might as well learn to work with it and just learn to tolerate it realistically. That isn't to say I'm fully in favour of I'm either pro or against it, but I think that the mindless anger that I see towards it at the moment seems to be largely focused around the belief that artists are afraid that AI art generators are going to put them out of work. In much the same way I think that many professional photographers felt like mobile phones having cameras on them was going to put them out of work, when it just hasn't. People still want proper professional photography done for their weddings, and people mostly, there are a few like crappy websites that maybe have all their product photography done by some intern with an iPhone, but they, companies that have a respect for themselves and for the product will actually hire a proper photographer to do the job. And I think the same goes for art. I mean, at the end of the day, you can sit there spending hours as an art director talking to ChatGPT or talking to Midjourney trying to get the results you want, but it's much easier just to talk to a human being and give them an example of what you want, and you're more likely to get the results that you want. So I don't think artists as a population are particularly endangered by the advent of AI art. I think the kind of people that are going to use Midjourney to generate art for their game or for their project were probably never going to hire a professional artist anyway, in the same way that the kind of people that steal computer games or movies, they were never going to pay for that in the first place. So you're not really losing customers by seeing them do it. So as you can see here, I've laid down a second layer of colour, and I'm just now making that kind of look. And this my original intention was to have this as a kind of shadow layer underneath another clump of fur, but I'm just kind of going with the flow at this point and seeing what happens. I think some of my strokes are too short. I'm making a lot of very small ones. I think I need to mix up the length of my strokes a little bit more. So going back to the AI art thing, it's an interesting thing to see as someone who was a professional photographer for a while, and seeing the mass panic in many of my colleagues when mobile phones started getting cameras, decent 20 megapixel cameras in them as standard, to see the reaction, many people panicking and making a fuss and attacking, saying this isn't fair, why should we, and it's unfortunately that's progress. As frustrating as that might be for us to see that certain professions are being, I wouldn't say superseded, but certainly a lot of the work that they previously maybe would have done might be now done by computers. But it's up to the individual to find a way to leverage that technology to their advantage rather than letting it beat them down. I don't mean necessarily the people that are you know, the number of tutorials for how to make prompts for Midjourney and things like that. It just boggles my mind, because they claim to have secrets on how to use it, and most of them don't. It's just type a prompt. If the prompt doesn't work, try again, which is essentially how to use ChatGPT and Midjourney and other things, you know. Just keep refining your prompt until you get the result that you're after. And read the documentation. You don't need to pay $50 for someone to teach you how to do that. So my third layer was a little bit brighter than the bottom layer. I'm still undecided as to whether or not that was a good creative choice or not. But this is just my first ever attempt at practicing for using this technique. So my expectations aren't particularly high in terms of the quality of the output. So if I do get a decent output, then I'll call that a win. So I'm going to add sort of 2 more layers and then maybe put a crown in the middle. But I've done enough rambling, so I'm going to leave you in peace now so you can enjoy the rest of the video. Thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next one.